Hi everyone, today we're going to continue to learn about living organisms. Our past units on life science, we have learned about consumers and producers and even decomposers. What we're going to learn about today is a specific type of consumer. And if you guys remember, consumers will consume food and produce wastes. The consumer that we're going to investigate today is the owl. They're a little bit different than other consumers. They do produce wastes, but what they do that's a little bit different is that they actually eat their entire food whole. So some of the foods that they like to eat are rats and mice and birds and voles. And when they eat their food whole, they can't actually digest all the parts of the animal. They can digest the meat and all the digestible parts, but they cannot have the fur, the bones, the teeth, the other parts. So what we're going to talk about today is what happens to the parts that they cannot digest. So what I want to show you is a diagram of an owl eating its prey. And the first thing it does is that it starts by eating its prey whole. You can see the little mouse inside of the owl's mouth. And it travels down into the stomach of the owl, and there are some acids that start to break down the prey, and it keeps traveling further down into the stomach, and this is where they start to digest the animal. After it's been digested, then we have some undigestible parts that we need to take care of. And the undigestible parts actually form a pellet. And this pellet is regurgitated back through the mouth of the owl. So I want to show you guys, I'm going to keep the diagram up while I talk about pellets for just a minute. Owl pellets are masses of bone, teeth, hair, feathers, and exoskeletons of different animals that are preyed upon by raptors. The pellets are produced and regurgitated by owls, hawks, eagles, and other raptors that swallow their prey whole. Owls feed early in the evening and regurgitate in a single pellet approximately 20 hours later. The weak stomach muscles of the bird form an undigested fur, bones, feather into wet, slimy pellets. In this process, even the most fragile bones are usually preserved unbroken. The food of almost any kind of animal can be traced back to plants. Organisms are related in food webs in which some animals eat plants for food and other animals eat the animals that eat the plants. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you another chart that I have up here, which is my food web. And you're going to see down here, all energy starts with the energy of the sun. The sun transfers its energy into the producers like the trees, the shrubs, the grass. The trees will produce berries and nuts, and all of these consumers get eaten and give energy to the other animals, right? So we'll see the grass gets eaten by a vole. The trees and shrubs produce berries and nuts that get eaten by a mouse. The dead leaves are eaten by the worms and insects, which are our decomposers. The worms and insects are eaten by the shrews. And here you see both all the shrew, the mouse, the voles are all eaten by the barn owl. All of the energy that is given to the barn owl starts with the energy from the sun. So the food chain here shows the relationship between the producers, which are the plants, the consumers, that are the animals that eat the plants or eat other animals. So what I have here is an actual owl pellet. This owl pellet is not one that I found, but it's one that we actually purchased from a scientific supply company. The owl pellet, I don't need to be wearing gloves. I am, just to be extra safe. Owl pellet is wrapped in aluminum and it's fumigated, so it's actually safe to touch. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a tape measure and measure both the length and the width. So I'm going to measure it one side to the other, and we'll see this is about 5.5 centimeters, and I am going to record that on the side, and that's the length. And I'm also going to measure the width, and the measurement of the width you'll see is a little bit under 3 centimeters. And the reason we measure is to see the size, to find out what kind of a meal this owl had right before it regurgitated. So I'm going to open it up and unwrap it and look at it. And I'm actually going to give it a smell. It doesn't really have much of a smell, but you'll notice it's pretty hard, pretty stiff. And what you want to do is you want to break it up, but when you are breaking it up, you want to find a place where it breaks easily. There are bones in here, and so you don't want to break any of the bones that are in here because all the bones should be intact. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look on the outside and notice, do I see any fur? Do I see any feathers? I do see fur, but does it look like we see any feathers? Nope, not on this one. I have another one that's whole too. This one also doesn't show any feathers. Oh, actually, it does. There is a feather right here. Is that feather or some fur? It's not feather, sorry. It is fur. So I'm going to put that one off to the side, and we're going to look, break it up a little bit more by hand and try to see what I have inside of my pellet. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to find out what was the owl eating. What kind of food did this owl have before it regurgitated? And that's going to help us give us some more some information as to what do owls like to eat, and in this region, what did the owl like to have? So I'm going to take the fur, and whatever I break up that's not a bone, I'm going to put off to the side for now. So I'm going to still use my hand, break it up. I have some tweezers here, and I have a toothpick to help me break things apart. You'll see some little bones, and these little bones here, I don't know if you guys can see, this is an actual rib of some kind of animal. I'm going to put that off to the side. We're going to keep opening, keep dissecting, and a whole bunch of little bones. These little bones are already giving me some hints that this was not a bird. This was some kind of a smaller animal, probably a vole or a very, very small mouse. This was probably not a rat. The one thing that's really going to help me identify what was inside is the skull, the beak, the jaw that I find. I don't see anything exciting just yet, so I'm gonna go into the other sections and see if I can find any other bones. So all the bones, I don't know if you can see on camera here, all the bones that I'm collecting, I'm moving off to the side, and I'm gonna save that for later, and I'll show you what we're gonna do with that later on. You guys see I'm being really, really careful. Another bone that I have found. This one's actually a really good one to help me identify the organism that I have. Some of the bones are stuck in there, trying to dig them out. Oh, we have a bunch of little bones here. I'm gonna move them all to the side. These are all gonna be so useful later. Okay, let's put all the bones to the side. Oh, another fun bone. This is a really nice one. It's really exciting to find all the bones intact. So my owl ate its prey, swallowed it whole, and none of the bones broke while it was eating, while it was regurgitating. You guys know what I told you guys, the definition of regurgitation. The definition is to bring up swallowed food back to the mouth again. So that's not really creating waste, right? Some people think that when owls regurgitate, that's their waste. It's not their waste. They do produce waste just like other animals do. But the regurgitation is actually the undigested fur, the bones, the teeth. So we might find some teeth in here. Lots and lots of good bones in here. We're gonna take them apart. Oh, and look what I just found. Can you guys see that? Bring it up closer. This is a jaw. Flip it around and you can see some teeth, some tiny, tiny little teeth attached to the jaw. Beautiful. We're gonna keep collecting all the bones, putting them all to the side. And you might find more than one animal in here. Depends on if your owl was hungry that night or if it wasn't. Actually, the young will eat more than the older than the parents because they are growing. So you'll see if the pellet is bigger, actually might belong to a younger owl. Keep going, keep going. And I don't see a skull in here, but it might be in the other part. Oh, and I think I just cracked something. Let's see if we can break it apart. And it looks like another part of a jaw. I'm gonna put that to the side. Oh, and this, I know what this is. This is part of the scapula. So I'll show you guys later the bone chart. Still looking. What I really am looking for is the skull, and it looks like, I don't know what this is. It's another jaw or a skull. Sometimes they get wrapped in together. Just takes a little bit of precision to be able to carefully take out all the fur that's in here. I have a little bit of water that I could use to wash them off too, but I'm not gonna do that just yet. There we go. And I have a part of the skull. It's another exciting part that I found. So this is another big piece to my puzzle. And I'm gonna look at my key a little later to see what animal I think I have. Another big bone. That's gonna be really, really helpful. Ooh, wow. Treasure chest of bones. So exciting. Just using my tweezer to figure out. And there are times inside of one owl pellet, you'll find multiple jaws and multiple skulls. And all that means is the owl was hungry. So it had more than one prey, it had more than one animal at its last feed. So we're gonna keep just removing the fur away. And you guys see these tiny little bones? These are the actual ribs, still intact. How cool is that? Oh, something, I just lost something. Here's another good bone. And you guys know I'm collecting all these bones, and the reason we're collecting the bones is to reconstruct the skeleton of the animal that it last ate, right? And the reason I'm doing this is to be able to give me some more information about owls, what they like to eat, and owls in a particular region, if you see that they're eating certain things. And do you guys know why owls are so important, especially barn owls? If there were no barn owls, what would happen to the mat and grouse population there? Something to think about, right? Are the barn owls helpful or are they a pest? Something to think about. Here's the other chunk of my pellet with all the big bones, and there's a big chunk over here. Let's see what I have here. Do you guys see how all the bones are wrapped in together? Everything, so the owl will eat the animal whole. It goes into its first stomach, where all the stomach acid is. Starts to break down the animal. Then it goes into the actual stomach where it gets digested. And then once it's digested all the meat and all the goodies, then the fur, the bones, the teeth, everything else here, I have another jaw. Everything else, all the exoskeleton gets regurgitated, comes back up through the mouth into this little furry pellet. Let's keep dissecting. Keep opening it up. Tiny, tiny bones, so many bones. There's just a whole lot in here. And it looks like another big bone. This maybe, sometimes you might find broken pieces and you have to figure out later. So I don't know if this is part of a skull, but we'll figure it out. We'll see what we have and what we don't. And I am gonna just start picking out some of my bones in here. Oh, there's a whole bunch in here. Oh, look what I found, another jaw. So you wanna find at least 2 jaws, right? You have 1 skull, 2 jaws. Put that off. I think we have majority of our bones done. I'm gonna keep picking at this until we see that we have nothing left but the fur. So the fur we're not gonna do anything with. The fur doesn't really help us identify the animal. If we found feathers, then I would think, oh, well, I have some kind of a bird. But I didn't really find the birds. And what I found in past years is the birds are really hard to find. They're not very common. Usually in a class of 40, we'll have 1 bird maximum. Actually, even probably less. In a class of 100, we'll find 1 bird. So what I have here are a couple of the diagrams of what the reconstructed animals would look like. And so what I have here are the voles. The next one is a mole skeleton, followed by a rat skeleton, and finally the bird skeleton. Now, looking at all of the bones that I collected, it's most likely that I have a vole. And the next thing I'm going to show you is how we know what we have. Here is an owl pellet bone chart. We could look at the skulls. Based on the skulls, I have the rodent, the shrew, the mole, or the bird, the jaw of a rodent, a shrew, a mole, or a bird, and all the different body parts, right? There's the scapula, the forelimbs, the hind limbs, the pelvic bone, the rib, and finally the vertebrae. So we're gonna go back. Most probably I have a vole here, and let's see if I can reconstruct it using my bones and using my skull. So I'm gonna actually found, how many skulls? I found 2 skulls, and my 2 skulls, they're pretty similar, both the same size. They look like they would both be a vole. I'm gonna find the one that looks prettiest. I'm gonna place it right over where it should go. And I also found multiple jaws. Let me find my jaws. So here is oops, it's flipped over. Let's go back to that side. Here is one jaw, and perfect. Here is the other jaw. So we got the basics, right? And now we want to find the other bones. So what we see here is an almost reconstructed owl pellet, vole skeleton actually from our owl pellet. We have the two jaws, we have the skull, I have the radius and the ulna, I have the scapula, which is right here. We have some of the ribs. We have the humerus. And coming all the way down, we have some of the vertebrae. Some of the other ones are still there. They're just really, really small. And then we have the tibia and the fibula. We have the femur. And we have the two pelvic bones, which are really, really easy to identify. So just to recap what we did today is we were learning about owls and the type of food they like to eat and also their digestion, right? We started with an owl pellet, and we learned an owl pellet is what the owl regurgitates, everything that it cannot digest, right? So it takes the animal, it eats the animal whole, and it secretes enzymes and all sorts of acids, stomach acids, and it eats up all the parts, the flesh and everything that it can consume. And it's left with the bones and the fur and the teeth and all the exoskeleton of the animal. And it brings that back up through its mouth, and it forms this tiny little pellet. The reason we do this, the reason we dissect, is because it helps us trace back and find out what do owls like to eat. Hope you guys all enjoyed the owl pellet dissection. Please be on the lookout for a set of questions that you can answer just by watching the video. Thank you.